Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Welcome to another episode of Faith in Your Recovery. I'm here today with Dr. Robb Kelly, PhD. He's worked with thousands of people, including celebrities of film, music, and sports. He's lectured at many high-profile universities and hospitals on the subject of addiction and is recognized as a leading authority on addiction recovery methods that are changing lives worldwide. Welcome, Dr. Robb.
Thank you so much, Randy. Great to be here.
Wonderful to have you with us. Hey, let's start off. Go ahead and explain to the folks where that you are in Texas, yes?
Correct. I'm in San Antonio, Texas, but as you can tell by my accent, I'm not from Dallas. No, I'm from Manchester, United Kingdom, and I've been in Texas for around 15, 16 years.
Okay, they play a little football over there, soccer-style football, yes, sir?
They do, yeah. They have two big teams where I'm from, Manchester City and Manchester United. I'm a fan of them both before the bricks start throwing. So, yeah, very, very good.
Oh, all right. Well, your bio describes you as an eccentric, no-holds-barred. Yeah, look at that. Place your patient first kind of guy that's the Gordon Ramsay of the addiction world. Explain that to us. Tell us your version of how you see yourself.
Well, I'm kind of a no-nonsense guy when it comes to addiction and childhood trauma and behavioral, because I think that a lot of treatment centers have got it wrong, and that you can't always love someone around. There has to be boundaries. So I've been known to curse and I've been known to swear and throw tantrums when patients don't follow direction. So I think that's where it came from. And of course, I've been on Oprah, the doctors, I've been on all of them, and they've all nicknamed me the Gordon Ramsay of addiction. So I kind of like it. It's not. It could be worse, that's for sure. So I'll take it any day.
Do you think it's an accurate label?
Yes, I love that label.
All right, okay. I understand what it says and what you just had to say. Thank you. I understand you grew up as a musician.
I did. I was on stage at the age of 9 with my musical family. So I played music all of my life. I play any instrument, literally any instrument. It's just something that's ingrained into my brain that I can do. And I used to be a pro musician while going to college. But these days, I'm actually sat in my office stroke recording studio. But it's very rarely do I pick a guitar up or play a drum or pick the reed instrument up because I'm so busy these days. So, yeah, I try and keep my hand in, but not as often as I'd like.
So what would you consider your favorite instrument?
I'd stick with my bass guitar. I think it's what I master on. It's what I session on many times. So we're going to stick with that, I think.
Okay. Was picking up instruments, was getting into music a family expectation, or was that a choice? You said you were like 9 when you started on stage. So was that your choice at that time or family expectation?
Okay, first of all, in 15 years of doing the television radio podcast, no one's ever asked me that question. What a great question.
Awesome.
And I've just thought about it now. No, it wasn't really by choice. I mean, I love playing guitar because my uncle played, but the going on stage was I was expected to. Wow, just made me think that one for a second. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Randy.
Well, good. That's one of my goals. I want to hit you with something you haven't had addressed.
Yes.
Keep it fresh for you as well as our folks. I read in your bio and some of your history, you played for some for some pretty big names, and would you go ahead and share some of those with us, please?
I've played with Elton John, David Bowie, Freddie Mercury. That it goes on and on and on, because I used to be a session musician at Abbey Road. So I would stand in when the bass player was sick from different bands. Just so happens at that time I was there, they were the bands coming through the studio and recording. So I'd like to say that I'm really special and good, but I just think I was one of the guys that was spare, and they dragged me in to play bass with them guys. Plus, hundreds of more when I was there. Really enjoyed my time at Abbey Road. The next question people ask me, who is the best and the worst musicians you play with? Freddie Mercury was my best. We spent many an hour in the morning speaking philosophy. And then I got to say, with tongue in cheek, but still smiling, Elton John was probably the worst, just because of the tantrums. So yeah, it's a good time at Bio.
Well, that sounds like an interesting time for you. And about how long was that you played with those individuals?
I would say late 70s, early 80s, maybe around that time frame.
So for what, 10, 12 years you were playing there at Abbey Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I am contacting you remotely here from Indiana. So
Ooh.
Abbey Road, I know a little bit about it only because I've read your history. Tell the folks what Abbey Road
Oh, excellent. So Abbey Road, guys, is a recording studio in London, and most famous people go there. So you've heard of the Beatles. They made Abbey Road famous because they did plenty of the albums there. But it was the main recording studio, the kind of elite recording studio to play at in England. All of the top bands that you could ever think of from the last, I would say maybe 50 years, I've played at Abbey Road. It's kind of the creme de la creme of the music world. So yeah, it's got a famous zebra crossing outside it, which if you go down today, there's a picture of the Beatles. I'm not sure what album it is, where they're walking across this crossing. There's a famous picture. So you can go down there even today, and you'll wait 20, 30 minutes around that crossing, because everybody keeps taking pictures of them walking across the crossing.
I've seen the album cover. I've seen videos of individuals trying to get that accomplished, and certainly a joke play on it here and there and whatnot. So, yeah, certainly an interesting place, and had to be an interesting experience. So, I also understand, as we get into your story here, you come from a family with a background in addiction, alcoholism mainly, correct?
Correct, yeah, aunties and uncles, and eventually mum succumbed to alcoholism. So it's kind of in the family, but here's the horrible part I hate about the history of alcoholism as a whole, is first of all, going back to Granddad's time, you'll hear phrases like Granddad liked to drink. In today's terms, layman terms, he was a chronic alcoholic, but it only came over the last 40, 50 years when we started calling people, identifying people as alcoholics. But alcoholism as a whole is very misunderstood and underdiagnosed, or overdiagnosed, I'm sorry, because of the actual, what the disease is and what it's not. So after doing my history check, I went back 3 generations, and there was alcoholism.
Go ahead and explain to us how it's misunderstood, if you would.
Well, you've often heard alcoholism or addiction. Is it a disease? Is it not a disease? Alcoholics are born. Drug addicts are made. And what I mean by that is alcoholism is different to any other addiction in the world. Alcoholism is a predisposition passed down from generation to generation. We are allergic to the ethanol in alcohol. So there's the allergy straight away. There's 3 parts of the brain that differ from any other addiction in any other human being. And that's the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and the basal ganglia. they're deformed in the alcoholic. So what tends to happen is people go, oh, Jim is an alcoholic, he drinks a lot. You cannot drink yourself into becoming an alcoholic, but you can take enough drugs to become a drug addict. Because alcoholics are born this way. We're born with that gene. We're born with that deficiency along the line where it's been passed down and passed down. Now, if you have been passed down the alcoholic gene and the three parts are different, childhood trauma will be rife because everything that happens to us is a big T. It's all big trauma. And from that first drink, it's very unlikely you will ever be able to stop. The more you drink it, the more it gets worse. It's a progressive illness. Now, drug addiction is the guys that have addictive personality. So 90% of people, especially soccer moms that come to us with a heroin addiction, started in the doctor's
19%?
office. No. 90.
Zero. That's
90%.
considerably more.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so there again, that addiction is made, not predispositioned.
Correct. Addiction is all. Now, people may argue with that. But before you do, you have to remember that I was the leading researcher at Harvard University's medical hospital, psychiatric hospital, called McLean Hospital. I've also studied neuroplasticity for the last 20 years and neuroscience and intricate workings of the brain when it comes to alcohol and drugs. And I've been in this industry for 31 years with 8,000 patients and many tests and many organized tests with people. And it's the reason we have a 97% success rate with our program. And the nearest one we found to us is around 12%.
That's an incredible figure in and of itself. How do your colleagues view your understanding, your approach, your system, your recovery efforts?
First of all, misunderstood, Randy. When I first came, I was told to go away, didn't exist. Neuroscience wasn't a thing. I was told that alcoholism or alcoholic is somebody who drinks too much alcohol. And all of a sudden they tried to discredit me. And then they kind of smirked and laughed at my theory. And over the last 10 years, of course, the finding of neuroplasticity, which means we can reroute and remold the brain. We thought it was hardwired. We didn't. We were saying this over and over again from our trials and research that we've done. So slowly but surely, people are coming around. So we run today a very concierge service. We usually work with A-listers, movie stars, musicians, stuff like that. 75% of our work is done that, and the other 25% is complete pro bono, giving back to the community, like working class like me. Grew up paycheck to paycheck, and mum and dad didn't have any money. So, it's definitely there. It's definitely proven, and we're definitely doing what we love because we love what we do.
When you have a passion for the work you do, it's not even work, is it? It's the joy of seeing it happen, seeing the experience change lives. So how long were you an active alcoholic, and what age did that begin?
Well, my recovery, I first recovered, there's been relapses. The first recovery was 1988. So I was born in 1961. So I started really around 17, 18, where I crossed over from that heavy drinking or abusing alcohol. I crossed over to drinking alcoholically. So all of a sudden, quantities didn't matter. Times or days didn't matter. What the alcohol didn't matter. I just needed that into my system every single day, like every single day. And there were mornings, most mornings I'd have to get up and start with a small bottle of vodka just to get me up and going out the door. So towards the end, I was drinking 24 hours a day. People say to me, what was your hangovers like? And I've got to be honest, and this isn't a joke. I never had hangovers because I was never sober for 12 years.
Wow. As you look back, you've obviously come much farther than you even cared about coming at that time. What was it what were some of your big losses during that time? The steady drinking?
Wow, Frankie, good questions, my good man. I've never been asked that either, not directly like that. My losses, apart from financially, which must have been millions, I lost my children. The authorities took my children off me with the police and the childhood services and child protection services. So they took me off me. My youngest daughter was 1. It's 30 years on. I've never seen that daughter ever since that day. So, and then my eldest was 3 to 4 years old when this happened. And only 4 years ago did she get in touch. So again, estranged for 28, 20, my math is horrible, 27 years. So that was the biggest loss. Wives, houses, cars, parents won't speak to me. Brother still doesn't speak to me 30 odd years on. And I've just reunited with my sister about 4 years ago. So all them losses, the biggest loss in the world was my children. You know, there was my children. And I knew that God had me, and I knew that God would reunite when ready. I always believed in that, Randy, always believed in it. And I just kept working with people. And, you know, for the first 10 years I got sober, I was just going around the country with my big book, just, you know, teaching people about God, about recovery, about, you know, alcoholism and addiction and stuff like this. So it was quite a harrowing time, which took me a lot to get over. I had to go back to the scene of the crimes, my childhood trauma. I need to clear that up. But something amazing happened 4 years ago. My daughter texted me messaged me in the middle of the night. It was 9 o'clock UK. It was 3 a.m. US time. And it read, "Hey, Dad, I've just seen you on TV. I want you to come over. I want to meet you and I have a surprise for you." That's all she said. And of course, I woke up blurry-eyed, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was looking at it and I was trying to see, is that Charlie? Because we call her Charlie, her name's Charlotte. And I woke my wife up and I was like, "Tell me who that is. Tell me who that is." She said, "Oh my God, it's your daughter." Oh my goodness. We text back and forth and then we called her. And then within hours, we had a plane booked to the UK. We flew over there. We stayed overnight in a hotel around the corner from her house. We walked to her house on that morning. Supposed to be there for 9. We got there about 5 till. When I stood outside with my wife, my current wife, I just went to pieces. It was just all them bad memories came back of not being there for them. What a dad I was. I didn't deserve this. You know, all the stuff that still, you know, tugs at my heartstring. But she opened the door real quick without us knocking, which surprised me. But we fell into each other's arms, we cried, we laughed for about 10 minutes, and then she took me into her front room and she handed me my 3-month-old granddaughter. And right there and then, Randy, I knew I was doing something right.
I'm ready to cry along with you here. I've been choked up myself. I love that visual that you just painted. Out of the darkness to the door. There you not only get a meet her and embrace, but then that 3-month-old granddaughter. What is the granddaughter's name? May I ask? Alice.
Alice. Alice is her name, yeah. So she's around 4 now. She's going to school and she's doing really well, and she's really took to music. She plays several instruments. She speaks 2 languages, and she's only 4, which is brilliant. So yeah, me and my daughter. Well, my daughter, when I went over there and this happened, she said she wanted to go back to school and learn what I do, but she was interested in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. So we paid for her to go back to school for a 3-year course. And as of about 11 months ago, she would open my Manchester office and was my lead therapist as of about 9 months ago, 10 months ago. So we speak every day, of course, both professionally. I call her, speak to Alice.
That is
just
awesome.
Amazing.
You made mention of God's play in this earlier, and how I forget exactly how you said it, but how He's got this, and in due time, the other relationships will be restored. Just about the moment, your lights on moment, moved you out of the darkness toward recovery.
So it was one Sunday morning, Monday morning, Sunday night, about 3 a.m., 3 a.m. just coming out of a blackout and walking around the factories and office blocks. There's no houses or anything. This is after 7 suicide attempts. On two occasions it worked. I died and they brought me back to life on the side of a rainy, smelly, dirty Manchester road. It was all the losses. It was all the fights. It was the loss of weight, loss of my teeth from fighting. I was done. I dropped down to my hands and knees as a non-believer because I was molested by my priest. So I didn't believe in religion. But I fell down to my hands and knees. And I'd been on the streets for 14 months. And I wasn't crying because I'd lost my children or my wife or everything I had. I was sobbing that morning because it was the first time I realized that I couldn't stop drinking alcohol. I looked up to the sky and I said these words: if there's a God up there, I can't do this on my own anymore. And about 30 seconds later, this guy walked around the corner. He had a little Bible in his hand. He'd missed his last bus home from Bible study. He'd been walking for 2 hours. He took a shortcut through the offices that he's never taken before, and he came across me. When I met him, he took me back to the house, and he said, you can stay here for as long as you want. We'll get you in a halfway house, blah, blah, blah. But you can stay as long as you want, as long as you come to this 12-step meeting, which I hated 12-step meetings. But I went there, and during the meeting, a guy called John shared. He said, my name's John. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I've never heard that word before. So he talked amazing stuff. So after the meeting, I went over to him and said, will you sponsor me? And he said, no. But he said, I will be your spiritual advisor for a period of 12 weeks. During that 12 weeks, I walked to his house every Wednesday evening. I left Derek's house at 6. I think I got there for 7. I couldn't go. If I was downstairs at 5 till, I had to wait there until 7 and walk up. Strange. I worked till 8, and if it was halfway through, at 1 minute to 8, he'd walk me to the door and I'd leave. And I walked home and got home at 9. I did that 12 times every single Wednesday. He took me through the steps. He talked about God. He talks about spiritual awakening. He talks about my life would change. He talks about all this stuff. And on the last night that I left him, he said, Rob, be blessed that your life will change from tomorrow. And I said, that's ridiculous because I'm in Derek's house in the spare room or basement. I have a blow-up mattress. Nobody in the world knows I'm there. Darn it, the next morning, Derek come home halfway through the day and he said, hey, the guy who sweeps the floor at the factory's just resigned. Do you want his job? And I went, wow, yeah. Didn't even think about what John has said. That turned into a full-time job in a couple of days because I'm funny and everyone likes me. So when I got my first paycheck 2 weeks later, I went to the local gas station and I bought a little tiny teddy bear. That's all I could afford, and a card. And I wrote in the card, thank you, John, for introducing me to God who took the compulsion to drink away. I went back to his house, so when I got there, the place looked derelict, so it's empty. I knocked on the door, waited for him. Next door neighbour popped her head out. He says, can I help you? I said, can you tell me where John's moved to? And he said, there's no John. I've been here 3 months. There's been nobody in that apartment. So I let her close the door, and I knocked on the left-hand door, the apartment next door, and I knocked on a bit hard now because I'm confused. And this big guy comes to the door. What do you want? I said, well, where's John moved to? Where's he? He said, John, what are you talking about? I said, the guy next door to you, your neighbour. And he went on to tell me that apartment was derelict and that there was no floor in the apartment. And if I walked in, I'd fall down. You can't go in there. It's used to be red tape over it, which I'm confused now because I've been there 12 times before. So I goes back to the meeting the next day and the chairman goes, hey, Rob, you're back. Thank goodness for that. And I said, has John been coming here? And he said, John who? I said, the guy has to sponsor me. And he says, I don't know. I said, we were over near the coffee machine talking for about 10 minutes. And he said, and I quote, Rob, you were over near the coffee machine speaking to yourself. We've never found that man. But he told me that God told him, I guarantee that people can recover 100%. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
I wouldn't tell that story, Randy, for about 15 years. I would never tell that story because I knew people would think I was insane. But my work that I do, about 90% of it comes from what John taught me. 2% comes from college. And the rest of the percentages goes down to being on the streets. That's where my program is based.
Your personal thoughts. How do you explain that? I know you don't need to, but I'd like to ask you, how do you explain
Well, when I started to get wealthy, because I was working hard. I hired the best private detective in Manchester, England, and I had him try and get John, and he couldn't find him. The work I've done and the miracles I've seen and the near deaths I've gone through, even up until about 6 months ago, when they overdosed me at hospital and killed me, it has to be an angel. And I never believed in angels. My mom did, but I never believed it. But I cannot put it down to anything.
I've had two experiences in my life to where I knew it was an angel. I saw the lady no one else did walking through the halls of a hospital and asked me to go see her sister on a given floor. I went to visit that sister, and they told me, we're all here. Our family's here. We don't have another sister. And indeed, I'd spoken to her downstairs. And so I'm shaking on the inside listening, and I believe with all my heart because I've been in a similar place. So I'm trying to. Oh yes, I read in one of your one of the articles about you. You were staggering around. You were waiting for the liquor store to open. You went in that next morning and you reached for the bottle. I'll let you story, please.
Yeah, this was the aha moment with Derek got me off the streets. But before I was off the streets, my neuroscience started with exactly what I'm going to tell you now. So I'm outside a liquor store. He's also a newsagent, and he can't sell alcohol till 10, licensing. But I'm there at 5:30. I'm sweating. I've got shorts on and a string vest and a pair of flip-flops. It's snowing. It's below zero, and I'm sweating profusely. And I'm going into what they call the DTs, delirium tremors, which basically means, in layman's terms, if I don't get any alcohol in my body in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to die, or they'll get me to hospital in time. So I'm really desperate. I walked in this morning. He lets me in quietly. I walk in. He locks the door behind him because he knows me and he knows I suffer. And I need my alcohol. I was shaking. I couldn't even speak. I was shaking. My head was banging, sweating. I put my £10 on the counter and he put the bottle on. For whatever reason, this moment, I'd reached for the bottle and I put my arm around the handle of the bottle and everything stopped. The sweats, the hurting, the headaches, the shaking, everything changed instantly. I remember holding the bottle and I looked at the shopkeeper and I looked down at the bottle and I went, oh my God, it's not the alcohol. And that's what put me onto the neuroscience behind it. Alcohol has 1% to do with alcoholism, the same with drug addiction. It's not the problem. I have a thinking problem, not a drinking problem.
You made a comment, one of your phrases, I forget exactly how it went, but we don't help me out with is something like it's not about the drinking, it's about the thinking.
Yeah, I don't have a drinking problem, I have a thinking problem. That's exactly what it is. It's not the alcohol. Alcoholics are allergic to the ethanol in alcohol, that's true. But it's all about the mind and the brain and the past experiences, and the childhood trauma is 90% of it. So we can fully recover once we know this. Rewiring of the brain, neuroplasticity, and redirect of neural pathways, thought patterns, can relieve the alcoholism once it's understood and treated. The same with drug addiction. So there's a huge neuroscience side to this, when you have to understand that a couple of parts of the brain differ from other brains, and that we do recover from the illness. We can go on and live our life to the
Go
max.
ahead and talk to us a little bit about trauma. You keep referring to it as the gateway. I have always believed, you hear over and over, that alcohol or marijuana are gateway drugs. I believe trauma is the gateway to the gateway.
Well, you're talking my language now, Randy. Marijuana isn't the gateway drug. Childhood trauma is the gateway drug. That's all I'm going to say about that. So what happens is, especially alcoholics, they're more sensitive, more likely to get hurt than other people. And we hear things different. We're on a fight or flight all of the time. That's the way our brain and mind and central nervous system works. So me and my brother, for instance, was stood on the kitchen table one day, and my mum walked in. And we weren't supposed to be on the kitchen table. And she says to both of us at the same time, hey, get down from the table. You idiots. But Dad's going to find you, something like that. My brother jumped down and I freeze. You see what I've heard? Get out of that table, you stupid idiot. And when we did some trials and tests around this, most of the alcoholics go, oh my God, I heard things different. And I'm like, correct. We have to find out. So childhood trauma is not what you think it is. Of course, it's a crash. It's a relationship, mum and dad divorcing. It's all of the above. But therapists often say there's big T's and small T's. In the addiction world, that's not true. Everything's a huge trauma. So here's one that got me for years and years and years and eventually led to a suicide attempt, was this phrase from my mother. Robert, how many times have I told you can't go to college like your brother, you're too stupid? That was a childhood trauma from there. And of course, hundreds of other stuff. So what we do in childhood trauma is we take it, and because we're in the household at the time, we believe that to be the norm. So our feelings are hurt, and, we're told to shut up and all this stuff. So we take that on, the molestation, the abuse, the verbal abuse, watching mum and dad fight, watching dad, the alcoholic, come home. You learn certain things as kids with the trauma. If dad's an alcoholic and drunk and he comes home most nights and he's drunk and he hits mum and there's a fight, the child, his first listen, his first sign of anything is the key in the door from dad. If it wiggles around the door trying to get it in, they know to run and hide because it's going to be a violent night. If it goes straight in, they can stay because dad's going to be in a happy mood. So what happens to that, let's say, daughter, she sees this going on many, many times. She thinks this is the norm. So the mind is energy and the brain is matter. Mind over matter. Okay? So she sees this going on. So with the energy she creates and the normal life that she thinks it is, she goes out and she attracts the guy that ends up being alcoholic and beating her, or heavy drinker and beating her, because that is her comfort zone. To the extent that if she left that household and met a real good guy who looked after her and loved her, she would self-sabotage that relationship because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel, like mum and dad. So she will sabotage that relationship and go back to the guys that treat her terribly. That's childhood trauma, just a mince of it. But you have to decide, you have to unravel the childhood trauma. What is trauma to you? What happened when you was a kid? There was an instance when we took a 25-year-old guy on and suffering heavily from trauma and abandonment because of never validated, never approved by dad. And what happened is his dad was a professional runner in his day, Olympics, and he wanted his son to be a runner. So at the age of 9 and 10, he put him into school and there was a race. There was 4 people in that race and the first 3 people got a T-shirt. He just come forth by a fraction of a second. And his dad gave him a hard time, would never speak to him. He beat him about that. He would scold him about coming forth. He would mimic him. And we found out that for the last 14 years or so, he'd been chasing that T-shirt. And we actually had to get a picture of dad with the T-shirt, and we presented him with the T-shirt, and then absolutely sobbing, crying, but we addressed the trauma right there. And from that stemmed all sorts of stuff that he couldn't do as an adult.
To that moment, but rewarded him for his effort, and that gave him permission to feel victorious in that instant and to move forward. Yes?
100%. That was it. He was validated for the first time with us regarding the T-shirt, and he was approved to because people need approval to disregard childhood trauma. You need to give yourself permission to get well. You need to give yourself validation and approval. And then when we get validation from approval from others, we can accept that. I don't know about you, Randy, but years ago, someone would go, "Hey, nice T-shirt, Dr. Robb." I go, it's just something I threw on. Yeah. I'd always push people away with nice comments. It took me years and years and years to learn 2 words. "Hey, Rob, nice T-shirt." Thank you.
I could have guessed those words. Yes. And that's an acceptance, whether we agree or not what they're asking or trying to say. So where do you see yourself in the healing the personal healing process from your past at this time?
Personally or with patients?
Personally.
Oh, personally. Well, the work has been done on the trauma many years. But even today, someone will say something like the children reunited or the loss of the children, and it will still pull that cord where tears are produced. It's not as hurtful and it's very manageable these days, but it's made me get in touch with my real feelings, So the good news about a program like this is you get your feelings back, and the bad news about a program like this is you get your feelings back. So it's all about how you feel about yourself. And I've gone through all of that. And today I can honestly say over the last 10 years that I love myself. And I've been sober, quite a bit, but only the last 10 years, I've realized what love for oneself is. And if I don't love myself, how the hell can I love anybody else? So I continue. I'm always teachable. I'm perfectly imperfect is how I like to describe myself today. So just learning. Any trauma comes up, deal with it, talk to people. I have relationships, because when I look back at my first marriage, I didn't have a wife, Randy. I had a hostage, and I kept that girl hostage for 12 years. There's a lot of trauma there and getting over that when you realize that I stole 12 years of that woman's life. How can you give that back to somebody? You can't. So you really got to do your trauma work and heal from that. And the other thing I'll say, especially in relationships, what I did is I was scarred. I was cut by my first wife, and rightly so. But when I left that relationship, I was bleeding. So what I did is I got into my next relationship and I bled all over my second wife. And it never worked out. So I went back and healed. I've got my third wife. I've healed. For the last 10 years, we've been married, have a great relationship, and just blessed today, man, to be in the position I am with the knowledge, the friends, I have today, Randy, something I never thought I would have, and what most people do not have. And I have enough.
Yes, that says a lot.
It's gold dust between my ears, because it was always, if I got 10 grand in the bank, that'd be, if I got 100 grand in the bank, we did that. Then we wanted 500,000 in the bank, we did that. Then it's like, where do you stop and go, I have enough? And for me, it was a couple of years ago, and I thought, I have enough. I've done the car thing, I've done the house thing, I've done the Rolexes, I've done that. I've helped people, I've helped the government, I've helped masters of industry, captains of industry, I've helped the homeless. It's like, I have enough today.
If you're not pleased with what you have, how can you be pleased with having more? So
I love that. I love that.
Obviously, you're there. So I'm going to back up a bit here, but I want to move on to the next section, talk a little more to you professionally. And that is, I read a comment, your daughter, and I'm going to guess it was your 4-year-old, Daddy, please stop drinking. Quit drinking, whatever it may have been, which is, as I recall, the title of your book. Yes? Okay. Go tell us about that moment. It
was.
Please.
Yeah. So I stabbed my wife 3 times one night because she won't let me finish drinking. I call the ambulance and I call the police, and as soon as I called a taxi before that, as soon as the taxi arrived, I fled to Spain because I knew I was going to be arrested for attempted murder. There were superficial stab wounds, so it wasn't that bad. And 3 months later, they decided that they weren't going to press charges, and I came home. When I got home, my wife had all the bags packed. And when I came in, she said these words, "Rob, I'll love you to the day I die, but you're not going to kill our children," which I fell down on them before. I left them in cinemas. I was drinking, and she left. So I got hold of my attorney, and I told my attorney the first thing in the morning, get to court and get an order that brings my children back, and I will give you a huge check. So he brought them back the next day. I sat in front of the TV, and I was scared, Randy. I was scared of messing it up. I was scared that I had the responsibility now, but at the back of my mind, it was, I'll show them. Who do you think you are? I went into the kitchen, And the thought passed my mind, wouldn't it be great to have one can of beer to celebrate getting your kids back? 3 days later, when the police kicked the door down, children not being fed or changed diapers, I was in a stupor for the last 2 or 3 days. They served me with unfit father papers, and they took my little babies off me. So mom grabbed the youngest, Abigail. Grandmother grabbed the youngest, and my wife grabbed Charlie. And she's walking down the path holding her hand. So this little girl with this mom, hand was up high holding mom's hand. And she turned around to me 3 times. And she turned around first time as they're walking down the path. And she said, "Daddy, Daddy, please don't go." And then a couple of steps later, she turned around again. And she says, "Daddy, Daddy, please get better." I was crying. One of the police guys were crying. I could never understand that. It was a sad moment. And when they got to this big iron gate of the house, Mum opened the gate and she turned around one last time and said, "Daddy, Daddy, please stop drinking." And I couldn't do it. 3 months later, then I'd lost the children, lost my wife, lost the houses, cars, holiday home, parents, brother and sister, any acquaintances, any friends. And 3 or 4 months after that, I ended up on the streets. So when my daughter got in touch with me 4 years ago, it was while I was writing the book. We'd just finished it. So I was over in her house. We were talking about this book, and I would like to dedicate to her. And I said, we don't know what to call it. And Charlie said, "What about the last thing I said to you?" And of course, I went, "Oh, goodness me, what was that?" He said, "Daddy, Daddy, please stop drinking."
My question was going to be, did she remember that? And obviously, she did.
Yeah.
That
4 years old, 3, 4 years
old.
old.
The rest of those years, yes?
Yes, definitely.
Wow. Let's change gears just a little bit here, and we'll reflect back on all of that as we go. But how were you able to complete your PhD? I understand you were still drinking at that time. Yes. How did that play out?
I did.
On paper, I just can't see that. So explain to me how you were able to do it.
Well, I was at Abbey Road at the time, working nights and paying my schoolwork, and I also paid a lot of people because I had a lot of money from Abbey Road to do a lot of my work for me. I was drunk most of the time. I wasn't there on my own merit. I got there because as a 16-year-old boy, one of my friend's father was a Freemason, and they were desperate need for an organist for this celebration in the lodge. So they inducted me in as a Freemason. That's where I got the contacts who got me into Oxford. I should never have been there. So my drinking wasn't crazy at the beginning, but towards the end, it kind of was. So I scraped through. With other people helping me, other people writing my papers for me. So yeah, it was a crazy days, and a lot of it were blurred. How I didn't die, I don't know, because I was drinking in the morning, in the afternoon, and I go home, sleep the most of the afternoon, supposed to be in school, and then at night time I'd be taking amphetamines and cocaine to get through the late sessions till 2 or 3 more in the morning with my session work. Then I'd go home and sleep a bit, and it was just a cycle going round and round and round. So it was pretty much a blur.
So I get the impression that on paper it shouldn't have worked out. Obviously it did. And again, I think you used the words earlier, God's got this. And even in those moments where you may not have acknowledged him, you may not have pointed toward him, he was obviously there and pushing the right buttons.
I honestly know that for a fact today. So when people talk about God, I have to intervene and go, you know something, guys, I'm telling you now, he's real. I'm telling you, if you follow and work with God's kids, you can have anything you want in life. And life's amazing. Because even, I want to say about 9 months ago, Randy, I went to a hospital. I had a twist of the esophagus. So, and we've had this before, and it looks like a heart attack and feels like one. We get to the hospital. Of course, they know me from all the TV work I do over here. And like, "Dr. Robb, what's going on?" I said, "It's not a heart attack. Calm down. Your heart's there. It's not a heart attack, guys. I'm telling you." So they said, well, what do you want? Are you in pain? I said, yeah, of course I'm in pain. Give me, I don't know what the milligrams was. Bear with me, guys. If you hear another podcast and it's a different milligram, I have no idea what it was. But let's say a milligram of Dilaudid and a milligram of morphine is what I asked for. And so enough, the pain went and I'm good. And he said, Rob, I need to keep you overnight. I said, good, I'm fine. So when the nurses and the doctors changed, on this occasion, this is what happened. So I've just had my pain relief, 2 of them. I'm in bed, I'm chilling out, I'm cool. The wife goes home to get clothes and a shower, and then a new nurse comes on. And apparently this is what the attorney said. The nurse shouted, what should I give him? And he heard, what have you given him? So he shouts 1 ml of Dilaudid, 1 ml of morphine. So she comes in and I'm sleeping by now and she whacks me with the both again. So, and then she goes on with a day. There was a nurse that missed her coffee break and she was running late. And then one of the other nurses said, quick, go and get your coffee now. So she goes back to my private room and she sees me on my front with the gown open. So all my butt's showing. So she came in to cover me up and she noticed I was clammy and cold. That's because I was dead. She rolled me over. She was 5'2". She rolled me over. She banged the crash cart. She got on me and she gave me, the bumps in the chest. She resuscitated my heart. And I came back to, it was unbelievable. There was doctors. There was more doctors than I've ever seen in my life. There was business guys in there. They were screaming and shouting when I came out. They're like, do you know who this guy is? Oh, my God. We're going to get sued. Oh, my God. That's all I could hear. They called my wife, the nurse did, and told them that they had died and they brought me back round. And it was just a big mayhem. I wouldn't sue a doctor, but they gave me an amount of money just to not say anything about any names or hospital, which I won't do. But yeah, even then, God had my back because that nurse shouldn't have been passing my door at that time.
Much more than any coincidence that it was coffee time.
Oh, 100. Yeah. I mean, I used to believe in coincidences, Randy, but you can't put this down. You can't put all my stuff. I mean, there's loads of stuff I could tell you and you go, no. I go, yeah, got the medical records here. I was diagnosed with cancer once of the esophagus. And when they took me down for a final x-ray, it disappeared. And they had already called my parents in the UK, the surgeon, and told them that I was going into esophagus operation with cancer and the chance of coming around was not good. So they called them. That was a huge lawsuit waiting to happen because they'd call them. My mum was crying, my dad was, but they couldn't find the cancer. We shook hands. I never sued them, like I swore I wouldn't. But yeah, there's loads of stuff like that.
I once heard it said, we haven't come this far to only come this far. You didn't survive those 7 or 8, whatever you said it was, suicide attempts. To only survive suicide attempts. There was a far greater purpose than that. Obviously, you had to rise above those moments to make it to this moment. But you've gotten here and you're sharing that story, and we appreciate it. How have you seen the battle against addiction, be it alcohol or drugs, change over the years? Are we getting anywhere? Are we doing a better job? Are we more perceptive of what's going on? I'd like your opinion on that, please.
We are getting there, although treatment centres of doctors are stuck in the 70s and 80s, 90s, therapy, counselling, things which are not good to alcoholics or addicts, great for the normal person, keep going to counselling. But we lack of education about what's really going on. And the lack of information and talks around the family. You see, when people go into treatment, they get the family once a month to talk about little Billy and how bad he was. It's got nothing to do with that. The family household is traumatized by the person that has addiction. Everybody's brought into it. Everybody's suffering. So what we found out is when we introduce the family, so we bring the alcoholic in 7 days a week, 3 months, 1 hour a day. The wife has to do 2 hours a week with us for the 90 days. If she doesn't, we will not take on the patient. And people go, well, that's stupid. I say, no, it's not. Because what we found out is when the family is involved, the chances of the addict recovering goes up by 42% right there and then. So I think the new science is coming through, and there's a bunch of guys like me that's been thinking outside the box, because that's what it needs. Alcoholism is the only self-diagnosed illness in the world. 10 DWIs do not make you an alcoholic. A warning from the doctor, drinking every day does not make you an alcoholic. An alcoholic is of the mind. It's got nothing to do with the alcohol. And people don't distinguish the both. Oh, Jimmy next door, he drinks all day, he's an alcoholic. Well, you don't know that. You don't know. See, abusing alcohol is stuffing a lot of alcohol down your body. Alcohol is a total different psychological warfare going on there that's beyond the alcohol. So I think the more we do our stuff and the more TV we do and conventions that we do, when we pass this information on, people are starting to catch hold and go, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. Then we've got the past 15 years I've been over here. We've got every single patient and every single follow-up every year to make sure that our guys are staying sober. And to cap all of that, what we do, because we know we found the key to alcoholism, addiction, childhood trauma, and depression, is we're the only company in the world that offers a money-back guarantee. So if you relapse after following our direction and continue to follow our direction of the program, if you relapse, we will refund your money in full. So I think the more we do this and other people start to do it, and we realize that, alcoholism, it's okay being locked up for 90 days, but you've got to recover in your own environment. You just have to. That's what we found. It's like the old model. You say there's two houses. There's the treatment center and there's the house where the family lives. The family is dysfunctional. So let's say that this house speaks English. And for instance, recovery has its own language. So let's call that German. So we pick the patient out of the house that speaks English. We stick him in a treatment center and we teach him a new language about recovery. Let's say it's German. Now he's fluent in German. So what the old and current model is then we take him away after 90 days and we stick him back in the house that speaks English. What's going to happen? He's going to start speaking English again. He's going to get sick. He's going to relapse. So we have to re-educate the whole house. So when dad comes home or dad comes away from us, the wife and anybody over the age of 18 in the house has also been educated about the disease. It's a family disease, but it's also a family recovery.
Early on, as a part of your introduction, I commented that your recovery methods are changing lives, and I'm going to guess that comes as a result of your recovery methods that you described it a few moments ago are out of the box. Dr. Phil, I don't listen to him a lot, but I love his one line he'll always give folks. How's that working for you? With what you've said, yes. The past has been there. It did its best at the moment. It's not working today, and we've got to find a way that will. And you're obviously tapping into that resource. Yes,
we are, and obviously very proud of it. And we're showing people that, there's a life. There's a life beyond addiction, recovery, depression, but you have to realize what it's about and what you're going through and how you can get out. It's like, if you don't know the way out, you can't do it on your own. You need somebody else. If you did the same thing today as you did yesterday, you're not progressing in life. You're sat in your comfort zone. You will relapse. You will, not amount to anything. There's no champions. There's no CEOs, footballers, movie stars that do what they do now, sat in their comfort zone. So every single day we must do something different to reroute them patterns to go back to the old circuitry that is relapse, bad behavior, and stealing and all the stuff that we do. So circuitry needs to change. So you need to do something different every single day to rewire. And it can be the smallest thing. But we don't want to repeat yesterday to the T. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in that comfort zone. And the only reason why people say one day at a time is it's not an AA thing. It goes way past AA. It goes back to the nuns and the scientists and the philosophers and the psychologists back in the day that realized that different parts of the brain reset every 24 hours. So if you can live in the now with a little bit of a change, you'll be okay.
Interesting. Thank you for that. Where do you think we are today as a society concerning the bias and the stigma toward addiction?
The problem with the stigma is I think we're still there. I don't think we've come a long way. So nobody's coming out of the closet right now. Most of the people we work with are A-listers. They never comment on Facebook. They never even appear on Facebook. Most of them do a cash deal because they do not want their bank accounts tracing it back to us. So I think the more people like me come out and say what they got to say, but we ask every person, every of the 8,000 people we work with, can we use your name? Can we do this? And they all say, no, not right now, because obviously I'm going to get fired and a bad reputation. But you see on the TV now more and more actors are coming out and talking about the troubles and stuff like that. The only problem with recovery is there's no money in it. That's why no one's in a rush to fix this. You see, if the pharmaceutical companies can give us a drug to take, a pill to take, they're happy. If the treatment centers can charge us $30,000 a month with 2% success rate, they're happy. So we're left to the guys that are not in this but for the money. I mean, yes, I get paid a lot of money for what I do, but it was never about the money. You can take me out of my house right now, stick me in a tent in the middle of a field with my wife and 3 dogs and 1 cat, and I'll be happy as I am today. It's not material things. I've been rich and I've been poor. And I'll tell you something, Randy. I pick rich every day, don't get me wrong. But that's purely because I can give back more. We're known for giving away more money than we earn sometimes because, it's about helping people. It's about being kind to people. But we need to get in the mindset of putting more money into the recovery, good recovery places, good education, not old education. There's no point in teaching relapse prevention. I've heard people in treatment centers time and time again when I was with them saying, okay, there's 15 people in this room. By this time next month, 12 of you would have relapsed. That's not the way forward. Because what you're telling me is when I relapse, it's okay because you said I would, so it's okay. We're not teaching the right things in them places. And believe me, there are millions of places that we associate with. But there's a lot of bad apples out there that are keeping this going. So I think we're progressing. But I don't think we're where we need to be. So we need to keep pushing. We need to keep educating. The guys like me who need to stand up and be counted and say the things that other people are thinking. I was on a program probably, I don't know when it was. It was probably, I don't know, a year, 2 years ago. I can't remember. But I was live across the United States on a live interview with Purdue, the Purdue company, the drug company, and their attorney. Yeah, and we were there head to head. And by the time I'd finished with him, Purdue, and I know there's other things going on, but the next day they filed for bankruptcy. It's like, ever since that, people say, watch your back, watch your back. I'm like, listen, somebody has to say it. If something happens to me, at least somebody said it. I don't care. I don't care. It needs to be said, and we need to say, you cannot treat drug addiction with a drug. Now, if you're on Suboxone coming off heroin, good, but it has to be a taper. Because what you'll find, if you keep taking it, it's harder to come off than heroin. But now you're paying full price for it, or the insurance companies are. So it's a vicious circle. Don't be fooled. You can't treat drug addiction with a drug. You can't do it. You are not clean, okay? You are not California sober, whatever that means. Any alcohol, anything that you take in your body that rearranges the thought patterns and makes you feel better is bad for you, pertaining to addiction, like sports drinks, energy drinks, stuff like that. No good. And before you say, guys, what about coffee? Coffee is not a stimulant. What? Coffee is not a stimulant, guys. It blocks the tired cells away from the brain so you don't feel as tired. It's not a stimulant. Sports drinks, cocaine, all that stuff light the brain up. It's short-lasting and it will distort the thought patterns.
Okay. I want to head into a little area here. You made mention earlier, we're talking a little bit about Purdue Pharma there. We were talking about some of what goes on with all of that, the need for change in stigma and bias. I have a 501c3, A Better Life, Brianna's Hope. We're rural Indiana in about 27 different counties, 45 different chapters. We're not a 12-step. We have nothing against 12-step. It's simply not who we are. We've chosen a different path. We're in 4 states. We're at the grassroots level. and respect everything you're sharing here. What's your best advice for our small communities who are overwhelmed by addiction issues? What can be done? Yeah, give us a little advice there, please.
3 words: education, education, education. That's what we need. And if you're in a small town where there's addiction or your sons, start dialogue. Start dialogue now. Start teaching children at the ages of 6, 7, 8, 9 that there's addiction in the family or there's alcoholism in the family. We have to be careful. Education, education. And now we're seeing a new generation come through that don't drink as much because they want to be healthy, but they're banging Adderall and Vyvanse, every day, which distorts the brain and fires the brain, so the neurons get tired out. They're not firing as good. The synapses not producing more energy to go across the neural pathways, and eventually there's going to be some bad circumstances. And if you stop taking Adderall when you're hooked on it, you will go to the street. So dialogue is the best thing, man. Listen, we have a part of our company that 2 girls are sat there all day talking to parents. So if you're a parent, there's no charge. This is not about money. You can call my guys up for advice all the time. Just jump on the website. If you're only listening, I spell my name with 2 B's, ROBBKELLY.com. There's a button there you can press that comes either straight through to me or one of my staff, and we'll talk to you. Never going to cost you anything. Moms, we've spoken to moms for years. Sometimes years, once a week they'll call after the son gets well, I want to thank you. We've got all the time in the world for you guys. So we want to be here for you, and we want to help you wherever we can. And we want to put your mind at ease. And we want to educate you about addiction and alcoholism so you can help your son, daughter.
Thank you for that. Would you give that website again, please?
It's robbkelly.com, ROBBKELLY.com is the website. And what I would like to say is, guys, if you're listening to this and you are in that place, and when I say in that place, you know what I mean, contemplating suicide, stuck at home in a little tiny apartment, nobody loves you, nobody cares, you're drinking yourself to death, you're taking drugs, you don't know how to get out, you're scared, you'll never be good enough, smart enough. I want to apologize to you, first of all, because somebody's put that there. You can get out of anything. You were smart. You were amazing. So I want you to do one thing, guys. I want you to text me on my personal cell phone number of 214-600-0210. Text me, and I will call you when I'm free, and I will give you a 15-minute pep talk that will change your life. And if it doesn't, guys, I'm going to send you $100 personally for wasting your time.
I'm going to repeat that. I'll ask you to repeat the number here in a moment. But they can have your personal number, make a phone call, and you will give them 15 minutes of pep talk and encouragement. And if it does not work, you're going to send them $100 for having wasted their time. Is that what you said?
I did indeed, because I've never sent $100 yet, and we've had thousands of calls. But I can change your life in 15 minutes, guys. 15 minutes. And again, my personal cell phone number. And I want to tell you guys, it's this one here I'm holding up. It's not my secretary, it's not the front desk, it's not my wife. 214-600-0210. Text me first. So you text me, hey, Dr. Robb, I'm going through a bad time. When I'm free, I'll text you, hey, buddy, can you make it tomorrow at 3 o'clock? I'll call you. You go, yeah, I'll call you up. We'll talk 15 minutes. I'll change your life. Otherwise, I'll send you $100 in cash.
That's a too good to be true offer that's true. Okay. Thank you for your willingness to do that. That obviously shows that care. You mentioned earlier your clients are about 75% paying clients. The other 25% is pro bono. It's free time. It's you're there because you care. Obviously.
We are, and we have a golden rule run in this company, is every single therapist, every single coach, every single psychotherapist must carry a pro bono.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for that. We've touched on it, but I don't think we've hit on mental health. Obviously, all of this is involved with that. And I believe that, addiction is certainly a mental health issue, but not all mental health issues are built around addiction. So help us with how mental health plays in with all of this, please.
Well, mental health is obviously large spectrum covering mental health, but it's under mental health because it is a disease. It's an illness where the choice is taken away from us. So what people may realize is when we have addiction or alcoholism, we also have bipolar, we also have depression, we also have suicidal tendencies. We have all these things that are passed down with the alcoholism. So it's rightly under the Mental Health Act because it deserves to be there. It's no different to any other disease that we have psychologically. So it is a malady. It can be treated, but it's much deeper than you think it is. So what we started to do is, as a whole in America, is we've started to stick it under one name, and that one's mental health. So I will find a lot of times when people come with alcoholism, they note down depression, they note down bipolar, stuff like this. But when the alcohol is treated, them symptoms go away.
A phrase you were used minutes ago, but one that's of interest to me is the idea of self-sabotage. And alcoholism, I'm sure that fits into all addictions. Many of the people that I have been around and worked with, it's just a recurring event that even as they're moving along in a positive direction, it's almost a fear of success, or where they turn to that self-sabotage. Will you address that?
Yeah, self-sabotage, especially with addictions, centers in the basal ganglia, which is our repetition, strength, and confirms part of the brain. We do something for 5, 6, 10 hours, we learn it, and then we don't have to think about it. It's already in that circle. But what tends to happen with people who have trauma, childhood trauma, or any kind of addiction is it tends to be at default. So if you can imagine a clock face, because the round of the basal ganglia, it's not a clock face. But if you can imagine for a second, what happens is 10 after, everything's good. You've come off a relapse, you've come out of depression. 20 after, you get the car back. After you get your girlfriend back, then the kids come back. And then all of a sudden, potentially, you will bring that all down and you'll mess all that up for a reason because you don't think you're good enough and you don't think you deserve it. You don't think you're worthy. That's childhood trauma. So it breaks and we start all over again and we relapse and we go into depression. And it's just a case of rewiring that circuitry around that old behavior. So if you can imagine, there are billions of neural pathways in their head. If you can imagine your pathway being split between good and bad, if I've been going to the bad for the last 30, 40 years, then it's really difficult to swap over to the good. So the more neural pathways we have good in our head and the less bad ones we have, that's another way to recover addiction. It's rewiring and recircuitry of the brain that stops us going back to old behavior and old habits. For instance, the guys that want to stop drinking are alcoholics, but they still go in the bar drinking non-alcoholic beer. I'll say again, it's not about the alcohol. So sooner or later, you're going to relapse and you're going to be in the same state you was before because it's not about the alcohol. But if you're doing the behavior, that's what needs changing. If the mind and thought patterns around alcohol has never changed, then you will relapse.
Thank you. I see it way too often, and we need help in order to avoid that and to recognize what's going to be. Somewhere I've read in information on you that an alcoholic is 20% normal and 80% alcoholic, and a non-alcoholic's the other numbers. Can you talk to that a moment?
Yeah, so it comes down to thought patterns and behavior, 80%. So normal people have 80% and 20% bad. Alcoholics have 80% bad and 20% good. So our rewiring the circuitry will always self-sabotage, will always second thought, will always, not go for that job, not go for that boyfriend, step away from that car because we don't think we're good enough. We do things of the past and we end up relapsing or going back into depression. It's all the same thing. There's things, and I'll do this before we finish. I'll give you 4 things to change the circuitry in your brain to start with. It's all about changing that circuitry and not going back to old behavior. and make sure that people say, you know, I acted out all behavior today, Dr. Robb. And I go, listen, if you acted out all behavior, it's not all behavior, it's current behavior, and that needs to change. So the recircuitry completely from that will be heading you in the right direction for sure.
Okay. Couple last things I'd like to address here, please. You said something, and I believe this was concerning trauma and our response to it. Uncover what it is. Well, discard it.
Yes. So we talk about childhood trauma. First of all, we need to, it's called uncover, discover, and discard. So the uncovering is finding out exactly what happened to you because you're acting a certain way today. We need to trace that back from the trauma that started that behavior or thought plan. So we have to uncover what that is. And then after we know what it is, we have to discover why it's affecting our behavior today. So child molestation, molested children molest, abused children be abused, that kind of thought pattern. And then once we find out why we do it and the correlation between both, we have to work on that and then disregard that trauma away by a series of brain spotting, neuro-linguistic programming, psychology, great stuff like that, EMDR, cast it away, go over it, talk about, really find out what it's about. And then we discard of it. Psychologically, we discard. And the more we do that with every single piece of trauma, the clearer you will be. See, what happens with trauma in the brain is the prefrontal cortex is our decision maker, as a few other jobs. The main one is give me an answer to my problem right now, is what the brain is screaming to the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex, its job is to come up with a solution to your problem, and it does it really fast, so therefore really good. The only problem with that is it doesn't have to be the right answer. So what happens with traumatic people and addicts is the subconscious brain is where anything bad, let's just say layman, everything bad in there, all memories, relapse, whatever, they're all stored in there. Everything we see, hear, touch, feel from birth is stored in there. We never forget anything unless you've got a traumatic brain injury. Here's the conscious brain. This is in the now, today, thinking straightly. But the only thing is, first of all, they overlap. Okay? They overlap. So in the prefrontal cortex says, give me an answer, give me an answer, give me an answer. It will pull straight away from the subconscious brain that's full of bad stuff. So by getting rid as much bad stuff as we can, it creates the good stuff to be. So when the prefrontal cortex says, give me an answer, it's going to pull from the conscious brain. The conscious brain lives in today. So if we live in today, we're more likely to have a fantastic life. So babies are born with two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. That's all. The rest are man-made. Wait till your father gets home. If you don't pass this exam, you're going to not. I'll take your phone off you. Fear is an illusion. It isn't real. And people might go, well, have you ever done a talk anywhere? I'm so nervous before you get there. You're nervous while you're being introduced. You walk on stage and bang, it's gone. It's not real. What fear is worrying about the future. And what depression is worrying about the past. It's like we can't change the past and we don't know what the future holds. So why am I worried? I'm going to stay in today. A lot of the time when I'm speaking somewhere or doing on TV, it's got cancelled last minute and I've worried for 2 days over that. It's like I've taught myself that fear is an illusion, apart from loud noises still and falling down still. Now I'm 62. But yeah, that's all it is. And people are ruled by fear and the past. They're ruled by it. So we can't really live in today. And that's where anxiety and depression come from.
I like that definition of fear along with one of depression. Fear is worrying about tomorrow. Depression's worrying about yesterday. Right? Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Want to get ready to wrap it up here. I have just a forward phrase that I've read you use several times. You don't have time. Would you that thought? And I'll have one more question for you then, please.
Beautiful. I love that. I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah, we don't have time, guys. And let me explain what that means. Moms and dads, if you're listening, remember when you was waving your child off to kindergarten and next minute you're waving off to college? You've always heard parents say that. Where did that time go through? Where's it gone? We all think we've got time. So I wanted to capture this in real science, in real experiments. So, we followed friends and families, elderly ones that, were in hospice, and we'd ask them the question, what's the one thing you didn't know? What's one thing you regret? And they all said, I thought I had more time. We don't have time, guys, So me and my friend of mine was clearing out my parents' house after they passed away. And my friend picked up this black and white photograph. And he said, with me and him were like posing as we were bodybuilders. And he said, oh my God, look at this, Rob, look at this. And I was like, oh my God, look how thin our waist was. Look how handsome we were. And he said, God, those were the days, Rob. And it got me thinking, it's like, we didn't know those were the days back then. We didn't know how handsome we were. We didn't know how attractive we were, how powerful, how clever. We didn't know. So what if today's one of those days? And that's how I live my life today. You haven't got time. Date that girl, buy that house, marry that man, do it today. And because you'll never be ready. Everyone thinks, yeah, we're going to plan a baby. You are never ready for a baby. Should we get married? You are never ready for marriage. You're never ready for a new job. You're never ready for anything in the world. Jump in with both feet, because the last thing you want to do at the age of 80 or 90 is sit down there and go, I wish you really had done this. That would kill me. So take every opportunity that comes to you, take it. Unless it scares you like parachute jump, take it. And you will literally call me up in 30 years' time and go, oh my God, best information.
I've often heard it said that we will regret the things we didn't do much more than the things we've done. And I have found that out, and
Yes.
I live for the moment in that respect and just say, why not, and go for it at times. As a final question,
Yes.
the title of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. What does that title mean to you, Dr. Robb?
It means I have faith in my recovery, and I have faith in my recovery. So I have faith in my recovery that as long as I keep doing what I'm supposed to do, helping people, loving life, being happy all the time, just loving what I do, then that faith behind that is knowing that my life's going to be amazing. The faith in it is my God. Is the guy that saved me off the streets. So I've learned over the years that if I work with God's kids, if I help people, if I give money away, my time away, that I will be looked after, and my faith keeps me going. So by my faith keeping me going, it has faith in faith to go forward.
Is there anything else you'd like to say or comment about before we close down here?
Do you want to change neural pathways tomorrow, guys? Do you want to reroute part of your brain and rewire? Here we go. 4 simple steps. Get up tomorrow morning, please. Walk into the bathroom and look into the mirror and say, I love you 10 times. Let's start whacking that subconscious brain. I love you. I love you. Now, 10 times. It will feel awkward. You will not like it. You may not be able to make eye contact, but that's fine. Keep doing it. Second way, if you brush your teeth with your right hand, do 1 week left, 1 week right. Alternative for a month. Do that for a month, you'll change the way you think completely. Make your bed in the morning, guys. It's one check off for the brain, going, yes, I've completed that. I'm on a winner today. And the last one in the world is the most important piece that you will thank me for in years to come. It's called breath work, but not the breath work that you know. This is breath work that will save your life and add 5 years onto your life. Let me explain. Most cancers, growths, illnesses, inflammation grow in the body in a hypoxic area, which means there is no oxygen there. One of the reasons why no human being ever has woken up laughing is because of lack of oxygen. So our oxygen is depleted through the hours of 2 and 5. That's when the body is at its most repair. It's also when most people die of natural causes. The body is at its lowest. When we wake up, we only use about 25 to 45% of our lung capacity, like this. That's it for the day. One of the only reasons why the gym is good and you feel good, it's not the exercise, guys. It's this in the middle of the exercise. So we want to be getting oxygen first thing in the morning. Let's flood the brain with oxygen. Let's flood all the cells in the body with oxygen and live on that 100% that day. And here's how we do it. 3 times a day. When you wake up, around lunchtime, and around 5, no later, because you might keep you awake, is you need to do 10 exaggerated breaths every morning, like this. Get that 10 in. Make sure if you're standing up, hold on to something because you will go dizzy. It will add years to your life. Your thought patterns will become clearer. Your education will become clearer. Your mood will become better. There'll be more energy, and you go on to live a great life when it comes to your
That
own body.
advice requires no wealth, no status, other than being able to breathe that next day and doing it when you recognize time is short. We don't have time. But this is an increase to the quality. I've always said I want quality over quantity, but if I live to a ripe old age, I'll deal with that then. So, yes. Listen, thank you very much. Please give Courtney our thanks for making this contact. You've been a blessing to us. I know you're going to be to our listeners. We appreciate your willingness to share your phone number, the contact information, and just know we care here in Indiana and appreciate your willingness to be with us. So God bless. Take care. Best wishes, and we'll trust the family comes together in God's time. And I'd love to hear about it then. Thank you for.
Thank you, Ran. Great to be on with you. Thank you so much.
Well,
and thank
it
you
was
guys
our
for listening.
pleasure to have you. God bless. Thank you, Dr. Robb. Folks, thanks for joining us here at Faith in Your Recovery. Stay in the battle. God bless. Amen.